We continue with our Discernment of Spirits Mondays, and today we begin to dive into rule number 5. And so if we were to put a title to this rule, we would title it as such: Spiritual Desolation, a time for fidelity. Spiritual Desolation, a time for fidelity. And so I'm just going to read the rule and then kind of dive into it, okay? Fifth rule. The fifth. In time of desolation, never make a change, but be firm and constant in the proposals and determination in which one was the day preceding such desolation, or in that determination in which one was in the preceding consolation. Because, as in consolation, the good spirit guides and counsels us more, so in desolation, the bad spirit, with whose counsels we cannot find the way to a right decision. So there's kind of two parts to this rule. The first part, it kind of gives us a guideline and something to do when we are in time of spiritual desolation. And then the second part of the rule explains to us kind of like the why or the reasoning behind the rule. And so what is the guideline? It says, in time of desolation, never make a change. So two things to say about this, just kind of beginning. First, even though it doesn't specifically say spiritual desolation, we know the rest of the rules, St. Ignatius is speaking about spiritual desolation. So I guess what I could say, for this rule to apply, the first thing that has to be happening in one's heart is that one is in spiritual desolation. Not only just natural desolation, but one must be in spiritual desolation. So if one finds oneself in spiritual desolation, these rules apply, and one should take this action, which the action is to never make a change. Now, what is St. Ignatius talking about regarding change? He's talking about changes that have to do with previous spiritual practices that one has committed to before one entered this time of spiritual desolation. And so, again, first thing, you discern whether you're in spiritual desolation. If you are, then you do not make a change about previous commitments and proposals that you have kind of committed to in your spiritual life. Usually when we are in spiritual desolation, because we're not seeing clearly, the enemy is going to want us to change commitments that we have made with the Lord, commitments that have to do with growing in our faith and being faithful to Him. And so we could think of an example. Let's say there's this man who, gets invited to serve in a retreat, and he's doing well in his spiritual life, and he's growing, and he sees this such a beautiful opportunity to serve the Lord and grow even closer to Him, and he takes it to prayer, and it seems like the Lord is inviting him to, serve this retreat. And so he says yes and commits, and so he begins his formation to serve this retreat, and is being such a joy, and he kind of maybe does like a month of his formation for this retreat, and things are going great. He's so happy. And then different things start happening in his life. Maybe just work gets really, really like heavy, maybe some conflicts in his family, he's just feeling down, maybe just kind of naturally desolate. But then as things can kind of worse, and he's tired, and just God begins to feel far away, right? So he begins to experience kind of this spiritual desolation. And so next time he goes to the meeting to prepare for his retreat, he's kind of like not feeling it, and he's there, and he just feels kind of like, why am I even here? And so kind of the next day, he's just pondering about that meeting, and he's like, you know what, I may have not made the right decision. Maybe he even falls into some sin that he's really ashamed of, and he's like, I shouldn't be serving this retreat. I'm not worthy. I shouldn't be with this. And so he begins to think about the possibility of kind of withdrawing his commitment from serving this retreat. Again, we're seeing that this man is in spiritual desolation, and he's being kind of thinking about changing a previous commitment that he made in a time of clarity that had to do with his service towards the Lord. And so he's going to remember, oh no, wait, I attended this Discernment of Spirit Mondays, and Rule 5 says I should not make a change right now because I am in spiritual desolation. So he's going to say, no, I'm not going to withdraw my commitment to this retreat, at least not right now while I'm in desolation. He's got to stick it through until he's not in desolation, and then maybe he can reevaluate then and say, oh, now that I'm not in desolation, yes, I have all this stuff going on at home, and maybe I should withdraw. Okay, great, that's fine. You can make changes about your commitments, but what St. Ignatius is saying that we should not make them while we are in spiritual desolation. And he explains the reasoning at the end of the rule, the second half. Because as in consolation, the good spirit guides and counsels us more, so in desolation, the bad spirit, with whose counsels we cannot find the way to a right decision, right? Our judgment is clouded and foggy when we are in spiritual desolation. And so we do not want to make changes about our spiritual life in such a time. This rule can be so helpful. It can carry us through maybe a rough time of spiritual desolation, and it can give us clarity of action as opposed to like, what do I do? Should I change this? Should I not? Should I change? If I'm in spiritual desolation, I did not make a change regarding spiritual practices. Right? You can make changes about many other things, but not about your commitments with the Lord. So this is Rule 5, spiritual desolation, a time for fidelity.